It's now 7:05 p.m. The meeting is called to order. Our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I think what we'll do, since we have a huge crowd before us tonight, maybe we'll move to those items first, and then we'll come back to our more routine things. So I presume one of you are from Brookside and one from Edgewood, is that correct?
Yes, 3 from Brookside.
Okay, so our new business, we'll go right into new business under item A. Brookside homeowners are applying for the continuance of a variance pertinent to having a lifeguard on duty when their swimming pool is open. So maybe if you'll come forward and introduce yourselves and then present the question.
Okay.
You want me to go? I'm Jeff Roberts. I'm a 23-year resident of Brookside.
You can sit. It's
Multiple terms on the board, multiple past presidencies, and 2-time trained and certified CPO, but I've let that lapse as I've retired, and I'm not on the board this year.
And I'm Patty Heenan. I'm president of the board. I am a lifelong North Andover resident. I've been in and out of Brookside. I was one of the original homeowners when it was first built. I moved out, and I have come full circle, and I am back. I'm quite happy to be so. And this is one of our newest board members, Kevin Bork, new to town. So.
Yes. New resident as of last August, and they got me on the board.
Good.
So tell me, how do you handle people using the pool since there's no lifeguard? Tell me, I wake up, it's nice out, and I want to go swimming. So what do I do?
So you, as a owner in Brookside, take the key that you have that allows only you to use the pool, and you unlock the gates, and you let yourself in, and you abide by the rules and regulations of Brookside.
Then the rules and regulations involving children?
Yes, no children under the age of 16 without someone, a Brookside resident or owner, 18 years or older, at supervising at poolside.
So can they have guests?
They can have guests. Any resident can have up to 4 guests at a time, supervised by the resident.
And that, does that include if they have a couple kids each, or?
Four total.
4 total.
Yeah. No more than 4.
So on the weekend, or if it's hot out, you could have a pretty full pool area.
Well, we could, but over the years, our experience is that there's less than 12 people using the pool at any one time.
What's the ratio that you've just seen? I mean, again, there's nothing, everything is we're just pulling out of the air, but what have you seen adult to child ratio on average? Let's say during the daytime, how many kids might use it with an adult present or somebody over 18?
Well, it changes from year to year depending on residents who actually have children. Generally, what we see is that grandchildren come on the weekends and they're there with their grandparents. But once in a while, there are some people in the complex that have kids. Kevin has a couple of kids, and he would bring them during the day himself and supervise himself.
And so what are the procedures when a child goes under?
When a child at poolside?
Yeah, poolside, yeah.
The procedures are that whoever is supervising that at poolside will take whatever life-saving steps that they need to take, including jumping in the pool or grabbing the shepherd's crook or throwing in the floating device or hitting the emergency shut-off valve if the children are anywhere near any of the skimmers or any of the drains. And then if they have to, they will call either the people that are registered as local CPR volunteers who live right near the pool. And if that doesn't work, then there's an emergency phone for calling 911.
So there is an emergency phone at the...
Absolutely.
That was my first question.
I mean, if it helps any of you guys, I've got a sort of a report of what we've done over the last 3 years to improve where we were last time we got the variance, and that may answer questions, and then if you've got other questions, I can answer those.
That'd be
It's up to
great.
you.
Why don't you read it so it gets
Okay.
minutes?
So we're happy to report that we've had no health or safety incidents at the pool since we last presented to the board, continuing our perfect record since the variance was first granted. We have actively fostered improved cooperation and communication between Brookside, the Board of Health staff, especially Michelle, and our CPO, our certified pool operator. We've quickly responded to and resolved every issue found or recommended by Michelle every year that she comes out for the inspection. We manage a volunteer CPR and water testing group by recruiting, keeping rosters, and training each season so that and it may be one step ahead, but let me just say that we've hired, we used to have our own certified pool operators trained, volunteers from the community go to the training, get certified, and then manage the pool during the year. That caused us a little bit of concern because of the inconsistency and the possibility that somebody could sell a unit in the middle of a 3-year CPO term, move out, and we'd be left without one. So 3 years ago, we contracted with Lenny Amarillo Pools as a professional CPO. We introduced him to Michelle. Michelle was already aware of his work and had worked with him before. And as far as I understand, they have a good working relationship. We brought him back last year. Things were even better. We brought him back again this year. He comes to do his regular inspection work twice a week while he's contracted during the season. In between, we have a group of volunteers that do the water testing and the supervision of the physical plant and the safety conditions at the pool. And those people are trained by myself or by other people on the board according to the health regulations and our own rules and regulations. So they know how to go test the water. They know if the water tests come up out of spec, they can call Lenny, and Lenny will come out and take care of things. Or they can get a hold of me, not as certified, but as certified and trained twice before. I could go into the pump room and update the chemicals myself. And since I've retired in March, I'm spending a lot of time on the property myself. In the last 3 years, we've installed a completely new pool, deck, filter, and pump system, which is all brand new, up to the latest codes. As I said, we hired the professional CPO to manage the overall pool environment and to advise us and our volunteer corps. We've recruited this volunteer staff, which are CPR certified members of the community who have volunteered to come to our aid if we need them, or to train other people if we need them. We've got myself and 4 other board members to back up the CPO. We've updated and improved our signage, our lighting fixtures, our emergency shutoff systems, the main drain, our cleaning and chemical storage room, and the cleanliness of the restrooms. And last year, we repaired and repainted the wooden cabana connected to the pool, just to avoid people walking into broken wood on the side of the building or walking on wood that's come off the side of the building. And we look forward to improving whatever else we can improve this year to make sure that we continue to be in your good graces.
Well, it sounds like the maintenance issue is just delightful.
Thank you.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Especially cleaning the restrooms. I do that myself.
That's great. The only thing I want to bring up, and I know every 3 years I think you come back, and I don't remember how I voted last time, but I did have an enlightening experience I want to share with the full board. And first, before I get into that, how much does it cost to have a lifeguard? I have no clue.
Well, to get a CPR certified, Red Cross certified lifeguard, our research shows that it takes around, after you pay whatever, in addition to actual salary you end up having to pay, I think it's $20 or $21 an hour. And if we're open from, say, 8 to 10, 7 days a week, that's a significant financial burden for a 27-member condo association. We're a little bit strapped for cash right now because we have 2 people who have abandoned their units, and since Brookside was established during a time when there wasn't condo associations in North Andover, it was organized as a planned unit development. We have no condo association protections in the law. So we're not collecting any dues or fees from 2 of the units, and the banks have been dragging their feet for several years now on both units to do anything about selling them. So we're trying to manage with reduced resources ourselves. I think it would be a real burden on us if we had to come up with $200 a day for a 10-hour operation times 7. That's a lot for a small condo association.
Well, I want to share something in general. No names, no town, or anything like that. So this summer, I went to a party, and there was a pool, beautiful pool, and there must have been 40 people there, 50 people there, something like that. And I noticed that nobody was watching the little ones. Nobody. Even though they're supposed to. They're socializing and eating and drinking and whatever else they're doing. So I decided to sit next to the pool and watch. And I heard a little voice say, "Help." And she's 11 years old. It turned out well, but she went right down. And she didn't have a vest on. The parents didn't put anything on her to keep her afloat. So she was flailing in the water, and when I noticed, I heard the help real quick, and I had to spot her. She was already probably 5 feet down. I think it was a 6-foot deep pool, I think. There is no time to react. You can't call somebody on call or somebody in the condo unit, because by the time they respond, chances are the child may not wake up. So I jumped up, and again, I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just sharing an experience I had about this. I jumped up, shoes and all, phone and all, right in the water. Went underneath her, down to the bottom, picked her up. I could see her. You know, your goal is not to breathe in the water, because then, you know, your lungs are going to fill. I think she was about a second away from losing that will to fight that, not breathing underwater. But I was able to grab her real quick and throw her above me, and I was underwater so that she could breathe. And then I swam with 40 pounds of water and clothes with one arm to the side, back to the sidewall, and then finally people saw that, why does this guy with fully clothed and white hair jumping in the pool for? So I asked for help to get her out, you know, just lift her out. I couldn't do it. And fortunately, she was crying and everybody was emotional, but fortunately she didn't drown or inhale any water that we had to do resuscitation. Because everything changes. We have some doctors on the board, and as they know, everything changes when the lungs fill up. So that was an enlightening, life-changing experience for me, seeing what happened to the little girl. With all the adults around who know to supervise, yet everybody gets distracted, and they have their own business, and they're eating and having a good time because they're at a pool. And they figure one kid will watch another kid and say, hey, something's going on, but it turned out not to be true. And so I wanted to share that with you. I think every year I might, every 3 years I might, I don't remember how I voted, probably no, but having experienced that firsthand was emotionally overwhelming.
I believe you.
And most of the time, people won't even think of calling 911 until the worst has happened. You don't think, you react when you see something like that going on. There is no thought involved. And so everything turned out well, thank goodness. So it's hard for me to consider not having somebody actually watching for a child in the pool, being certified in CPR, and knowing how to do full resuscitation, that's CPR. So I have a hard time thinking about waiving it based on just my personal experience with the little girl.
Yep, and I understand that completely. Let me just say that, and this may help you consider this a little bit, but we actually considered that ourselves as a board last year and rescinded our party provisions in our rules and regulations. We don't have parties there. It used to be that you could have a party at the pool if you asked the board's permission and it wasn't a weekend. We stopped having them. So for just that reason, they're distracted. Now, you're there with your kids, you're watching your kids, and there's not eating, drinking. There are people that come as a family and use the barbecue pits that are up there, but there are not parties where people are expected to socialize.
Well, I think that's good. One thing it taught me was not to assume that people are watching children in the pool.
Yep.
Even the most responsible parent in the world may not be doing it all the time when they should.
Right.
Except this old guy who can barely move was watching the kid in the pool. So it's hard to assume that the parents are going to be as responsible as you're hoping, or a family friend who may come over with their children too. And that's where I'm coming from on this.
Yep, I understand.
I can certainly understand the point that you've made. But what they're asking for is just a continuation of the variance to not have a lifeguard on duty. Variance that obviously has been granted by the Board of Health in the past. Over the last year or so, as noted, Brookside has responded to all issues of concern brought to their attention by Michelle at the Board of Health, hired a CPO. It is, as you said, about 27-member condo association. I was going to ask about the party, too, when you said that there are no parties.
No, not anymore.
No children under 16. You can have guests, no more than 4 guests, usually less than 12 people there, even during a hot summer day.
Yeah. There are most hours during the day when there's no one there.
I don't see any compelling reason not to accept this continuation of a variance. We've done it in the past. You've made a lot of improvements since that time. I don't think that it's unreasonable. And let's open further discussion and comment.
I have a couple of comments. I'm actually impressed with some of the health and safety improvements that you've made. And thank you for, that's really what I was looking to hear. That you do have people who are certified volunteer CPR people who basically made themselves available.
I think we doubled. We're thinking of doubling. We have at least 2, and we believe we'll have 4 this year, above the 2 we had last year.
Just looking in the regulation, it says that as a guideline, it is suggested that 1 lifeguard be provided for 25 bathers. At least according to the testimony that you give, which I'll accept unless proven otherwise, you're about half that number. And it does provide for the Board of Health to waive it, basically as long as there's some signage. And there basically looks like 3 things. I'm surprised if Michelle has been over there that you don't have these, but let me make sure that we do. Warning, no lifeguard on duty. Children under age of 16 should not use the swimming pool without an adult in attendance. And adults should not swim alone.
That's, yes, there's a aggregate rule sign that has that as one of them, and then we have separate signs for the other ones you've called out, including the no runnings, the no divings, the no glass in the pool, and close the gates on both sides of all of the self-closing gates.
Right, and it says in particular in the regulation that warning, no lifeguard on duty should be in letters at least 4 inches or 10 centimeters high. I'm impressed that you have a phone. I looked at the other application for a variance. They have an auto dialer. So this would be a phone that somebody goes to and hits 911, and it goes Or is this programmed, pre-programmed, or how does that phone work?
I'm not sure if it's pre-programmed or not. It's a, so if
No,
it's,
but it certainly is something that we can do. I mean, the phone is able to be programmed.
Okay, so if I wanted to go to your pool and call my friend who I grew up with in college, he lives in Korea, that would be okay for me to come by? All right. But the phone is working?
it's a Verizon. I don't think you'll get anything this week.
All right. I have no other comments, other than I did a little quick math problem. I have a pool at my house. It's open 24 weeks a year. I'm sure yours probably isn't open 24 weeks, maybe 16 weeks.
It's Memorial to Labor Day, whatever that is.
So, well, anyway, I came up with about $1,200 per condo per year if you include the two who weren't paying, if you keep it open for a full season. That seems like a lot. I'm comfortable with approving the request. I'm actually very impressed with what you've done
Thank
since
you.
we had you
Thank you.
before.
My thought process is really, the improvements and everything else aside here, what you're asking for really is a variance to substitute some other process for a lifeguard, because really that's the main question here, not the bathroom or the deck or anything else. We're really, we have to focus on providing a lifeguard, and I think our obligation in terms of granting this is that you've shown a substitute process that we think can be reasonable. So I think I heard 3 steps of a process, that if there's an emergency, first line of help is the adult on the scene, correct?
Correct.
Then the second is you have an AHA, Red Cross, a Red Cross emergency trained 2 or 4 people on site who can be available readily, and 3 is 911. I don't remember if we had
Well,
it.
plus, there's an ongoing education system between the board, the people that are involved in managing the community, and the people that are actually using the pool. So, one, we make sure that every year that they're aware of what the rules and regulations are and what the dangers are. And then 2, we've got 5, 6, 7 pairs of eyes watching that pool all the time while we're walking back and forth during the day to make sure we don't see any infractions that we think is going to cause any sort of danger.
But what I'm thinking about, again, in terms of if you have a lifeguard there, that's somebody who can intervene in an emergency pretty quickly. So we're trying to see that you have something relatively similar to that. And how does that, we'll call it that person, get notified? So what I'd like to know is that if there's an emergency and the adult on site is not a trained CPR person, how does that person know to contact the person who is that provider?
Up in the pool house area, we do have a sign that has a copy of the CPR certificates and the people that are on site with phone numbers that they can call.
A clearly
Right next
posted
to the
name
phone.
and a phone number that they
Yes.
can call. That's what I look at as that substitute, albeit maybe not quite a lifeguard. I think given the modifications here, the sort of the middle piece, I'd like to see that there's a prominently posted sign that shows, all right, if person A can't help person B who's in the pool, sometimes person A, if they jump in the pool, then you got 2 people that are in trouble.
Right.
If they need to call the help, call it the help, how do they get to that person? So if there's a prominently posted sign that says, here's the number you call, and sort of the next level, I guess, is the board, you as the board, assured that at any time when the pool is open, at least one of those people are on site and available?
I think we can safely say that, yes.
Over the years, we haven't found any situation where there wasn't somebody there. So our experience tells us that we're okay where we are. But we've still, even this year, we've added 2 more people to that roster, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know, it's not a negative against you, I just wanted to let you know what happens when somebody isn't standing there watching somebody go under the water. You only have seconds. I mean, that's all you have is seconds. So what are you going to do? You're going to jump in and try to save the person.
Absolutely. We would do the same as you did. We hope people's parents or whoever's watching the
Right.
pool would be.
Hopefully. But I gave that story because since there isn't the lifeguard, I wanted to let you know what I personally experienced.
Oh, yeah.
So that-
We're all eyes wide open about what the risks are to this. We're just
Right.
trying to balance those risks with what resources we have in that small community.
If I could just add, when I first moved in and the first time I was at the pool with my wife and my children, Bill was also happened to be at the pool, and he made perfectly clear what he made sure that I knew the rules and the regulations. This was before I was on the board. This was just as a first-time resident. And he made it perfectly clear, all the rules and regulations, and also added we have these rules and regulations for a purpose, A, for your safety, and B, that if we ever had an issue, we would lose the ability to have the pool without the lifeguard. And he went step by step through all the regulations, made my wife perfectly clear everything that was, what we had to do. So, I mean, I can attest to, I was kind of like, oh, that's right, this is Bill, he's the president of the Homeowners Association, but he was making it perfectly clear what we had to do as residents.
Most people call me Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Right.
His name, Bill, sorry.
No, and I appreciate it.
Bill's the other
Brookside.
board member.
I think that it's very obvious that you've really fostered a culture of safety, and I think that that's laudable. My comment would be is it would be really important, even for people who maybe aren't on the volunteer staff, to really get the CPR training widespread throughout the community, because you're right. You guys own this pool. It's your pool. In order to operate it without a lifeguard according to the regulation, we're really relying on, you guys are the first responders, and I think as many people in that community who could be CPR trained would be encouraged. And maybe when we hear from you 3 years from now, we would like to, to find out that there are more people who stepped forward and volunteered. You never know when you need those skills. So
I think it's a good idea, and we will try that.
In fact, several months ago, we sponsored a CPR training.
Did
Right,
we?
Ed?
Absolutely. Excellent training.
More too.
I must have missed it.
Well, they were superior. They flew them in from Europe just to train.
Exactly.
But it sounds like you understand that sort of in terms of legal responsibility, the sort of the final obligation still really rests with the board. The fact that this board might grant a variance doesn't subsume any responsibility to the board of the condominium, so.
Absolutely.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve a 3-year variance. At the end of 3 years, you'll need to come before us and let us know what your progress is. We can't approve one in perpetuity, but
Yep.
I think 3 years is reasonable.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
No.
I'm sorry, anybody voting no, and you should really abstain it.
That's background material.
Okay, all right,
Competent to vote.
okay. Very good, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, folks.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Probably.
I said no.
Did you say,
I said no.
oh, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry, I asked for no's, you said, okay. All right. So it was 4-1 then?
Yes.
Because Ed voted a yes, so.
Yes.
All right,
4-1, yes.
okay. Edgewood? You have some answers?
I do. Bob Capola, Edgewood Retirement Community. And we are here requesting a continuance of our variance for our pool regarding our lifeguard. No lifeguard on duty. We have multiple systems in place. We have an emergency call button system that is in the pool area. There is also a pendant that residents carry with them when they're in the pool. That pendant contacts our nursing office, which is up in the Meadows, the reception desk. It also dials directly to Patriot Ambulance. Patriot Ambulance, upon activation of that, also calls the nursing station to make sure that Edgewood personnel are responding to the pool area. Residents are only allowed in the pool area between 7:30 in the morning and 7:30 at night. They are required to do a 2-person system. They have to sign out a key. They do not have access to the pool without signing out the key from the reception desk. And that receptionist is the one that ensures that there's 2 people that going into that pool area. We do have a wellness specialist who is also CPR certified. She works Monday through Friday from 6:30 to 3. And she is in the pool area typically in the mornings doing water aerobics, etc. While she's in there doing her water aerobics, there are some residents that do come in and do their lap swims. so they're not required that second person because Nancy is there. On those times when she is not there, it's mandatory that they have 2 people at all times with them while they're in the pool. Our security staff monitors or walks through the pool area 3 times on each shift. So during that first shift area, they're going through there 3 times a day, as well as on the second shift up until 7:30 in the evening, they're also patrolling through there 3 times a day. All of our staff, nursing staff, naturally is CPR certified. If there is an activation of the pendant, the emergency call system, 3 people respond at all times, a security officer, a nurse, and then we also have resident service folks that are there as well. So there's always 3 individuals that are responding to any code that we have on campus, and that includes the pool area as well. And the pool is a 5-foot depth all the way around. There's no deep end in that pool area. And there is also a hot tub there as well. And children are not allowed in the pool under 16 years of age. And there is a strict limit as to how many folks are allowed to bring guests. That's all done through the residents.
Is there a maximum bathing load?
There is. Can I get back to Brian on that number? Because I'm not exactly sure what it is. We do have, I don't know if it's, I don't want to say 60, but it's a pretty good number.
I would say it's probably
It's in that
at least
range.
60 or more.
Yeah.
It's a fairly good sized pool, from what I remember.
It is a 3-lane Olympic-sized pool. We do have, as far as number of residents that utilize the pool on a daily basis, per month, it's 7 residents per month. 7 residents per day. Typically, they're not there Saturdays and Sundays. If they are, it's not from a program that we're running. It's when they're doing the buddy system with signing out a key. And, I think the maximum we've had in the pool in one day is 13, and that's if Nancy is doing her aerobics exercise class or some sort of a class in the pool for the residents.
I think you have a wonderful setup. I
Thanks.
remember when you were here 3 years ago, nothing's changed, and you have every precaution. You have people right there on staff. And
Yep.
You can't ask for any more.
Thanks.
Just a
I
pen
can
is
live with that
like a
easily.
necklace sort of a thing that a resident who's going in the pool would put on?
Yes, so it can be brought into the water with them. Yep. It's waterproof.
So if the maximum persons in the pool is 60, there are 60 pendants available?
There are not. There are 2 pendants available.
Okay.
There is a telephone in there naturally, but it
Mhm.
also, the pendant, as I said, automatically dials. They don't have to push 911 or anything like that. It hits both our internal number as well as the Patriot Ambulance Service.
Okay. And I presume there's like we heard before, a little bit of an education to the residents of the responsibility of
Absolutely.
not having a lifeguard and what's involved. And I'll ask the same questions that Frank had. The signs are posted that are
All the
required.
signs are posted. We've got all the safety equipment, the backboard, the defibrillator. We've got everything lined up right in there. The hooks, the throwing buoys. We have the shepherd's hooks at both ends of the pool, so, you don't have to go from one end to the other to have access to it.
Okay.
Yep, and Michelle certainly comes over and visits us on a regular basis, so.
Okay.
Could have used that at my pool party I went to.
Yeah.
Saved your phone.
It actually worked. You let it dry out, and you leave the phone in rice. So I left it in for a week, and no problem.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant a 3-year extension for Edgewood Retirement Community for the continuation of a variance to not have a lifeguard on duty.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 3-year variance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bob. Good seeing you.
So maybe we'll go back to our order then. We have no public hearings tonight. We have minutes from both the March and April meetings. I think those have been circulated around, so Larry, you have those over there before you. Do you want to make a motion to accept those respectively?
I will do that. Each one separate or combined?
Sure.
Okay, so make a motion to approve Tuesday, March 22nd Board of Health meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the Tuesday, April 26, 2016 Board of Health meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Abstain.
Abstain? Somebody abstain?
I abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Then we have under our communication agenda a few items. So Dr. McMillan has been reelected as the Vice Speaker of the House of Delegates of the Massachusetts Medical Society. Do you want to make a statement to that effect, or?
Well, I'm very excited to be starting my second year as a Vice Speaker. What the Vice Speaker does is they preside twice a year at the meetings of the House of Delegates, which is the rulemaking body of the Massachusetts Medical Society, which has about 25,000 members. It's about typical House of Delegates is about 500 to 600 members, and what we do is we set policy for the society, we spend money that we have, and we direct our legislative advocacy. And so I'm very proud to have been elected by my peers to participate in that way.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Frank, how does the House of Delegates of the Massachusetts Medical Society, what's their take on the opiate laws, regulations, rules, changes that are going into place right now?
Well, that's a great question. The answer's a little bit complex, but we have a policy-making body that sets the policy. So we have, so what our officers do with that policy is then when there's an opportunity in the legislature or with the officers of Commonwealth, the governor and things of that nature, what they can do is they can say that our group of physicians, 25,000 of us, believes that this is how this should be, and so they can go with the full force of the organization behind them and make it an advocacy point. So one of the things that we worked on with the governor was the 7-day limit on new opioid prescriptions for first-time users. This is not people with cancer things. This is non-cancer pain. These are people who have orthopedic injuries and who probably aren't going to need a long-term use of narcotics. The original proposal that was sent to us was 3 days. We thought that that was not appropriate, and we advocated and were successful in getting in the final language a 7-day limit, which I think kind of basically meets the needs, and it also meets the need to have some sort of a restriction and not an open end on that first prescription. We've worked with the state about with the prescription monitoring program. It has gone from being very useless and very unfriendly to being more user-friendly. We hope by the end of this year it'll actually be something that you can integrate with an electronic health record, so you won't have to go into a separately different computer program. It'll open up a new window. The original recommendation from the Massachusetts government was that we'd have to use it every time we wrote a prescription for opiates. That got basically a little bit more reasonable with first-time prescriptions and periodically thereafter. The society also created new prescription guidelines for people who have acute need for opioid pain relief and those with chronic needs for opioid pain relief. They also created continuing medical education, which has real credits that we need to renew our licenses every 2 years, and they distribute them free of charge on our website to anybody who wants to get it, not only Massachusetts physicians, but if you're in Oklahoma and you want to prescribe according to best evidence guidelines. We've created those. We brought those to the governor and basically advocated that they get included in the state regulation, which they were. So the society is not only advocating for its members, but it's advocating for the citizens of the Commonwealth and trying to do this in a way that is rational, safe, that makes sure that people who need opioid analgesia have access to it, but that it's not overused. And the diversion is minimized to the extent possible. You can't get rid of all diversion, but you can get rid of a lot of it.
Excuse me, a reason that I ask is, as all of you know, I mean, I've had some serious medical problems, cancer, heart, and I shied away as much as possible from the opiates because I know a number of people, some of whom are very close to me, that have become addictive. So I just did my best to bear the pain because I was concerned about becoming an addict. And right now, it's 7 days, but someone such as me that perhaps would need an opiate more than 7 days, how difficult is it to get it?
Well, it would probably require a second visit, which might be inconvenient for somebody who's in pain. It's one of the problems that we brought up. But I think that most things, most acute surgical pain will resolve to a reasonable degree within 7 days.
So Joe just had a valve replaced. What's the max what could they prescribe?
He's a first-time user. Honestly, he probably wouldn't need opioids for more than 3 or 4 days.
I can assure you my prescription was a lot longer than that. A lot longer than that.
Well,
But that was before this law went into
Oh,
effect. So
that's
it
years
used to
ago.
be you could
Yes,
write
yeah.
for a month of pain medicine on a non-cancer, sort of terminal type patient. This was a big part of the conversation between the Mass Medical and the Mass Dental. We all objected. It was a very, very short timeline what the governor first put out, and we argued for 5, and I think you argued for 7. And I think the final result of 7 is pretty reasonable, because again, a provider used to be able to write 100, 150 pills without really any sort of recompense to the time of that. So,
Right.
but it is a bit restrictive in that if you need more than 7 days of it, there's a little bit of a question of access, and you have to make a revisit. But there are cases, a lot of surgical type issues where you might argue, who really needs more than 7 days of opiate prescription? Perhaps if you need more than 7 days of opiates after discharge from a hospital or a surgical procedure, you may be having a problem. You might need to be seen again. So,
right, and I think that what they came up with was rational. It's not going to fit. That shoe is not going to fit every foot, but it's going to fit most of them.
yeah.
And it's a good place to start. And I agree with Tom's point that if you have severe pain 7 days after a surgical procedure, you better be sure that there's nothing else going on, because most surgical pain is considerably improved within that period of time. Most abdominal surgeries, 3-4 days at the most. Orthopedic surgeries, sometimes longer, because you're cutting into bone. But for people with chronic pain, it's a different story. These are first-time prescriptions for somebody coming to an emergency room with a twisted ankle or a broken finger or something like that. And they honestly really need pain medications so they can sleep for the first 1 or 2 nights, and the pain starts to go away at that point.
One other question, too. Does the Massachusetts Medical Society have a position regarding marijuana? I understand that it may be on the ballot this year.
So we have a position on we have a position on medical marijuana, and right now.
Incidentally, I don't know how I'm going to vote on it. I just know that it probably will be on the ballot, and I think it's for people over 21 years old, period, like Colorado, which probably is a big mistake, but.
So we have a position on medical marijuana, and we actually have guidelines and things that should be in place for people to certify patients who want to use marijuana for medical indication. Right now, for recreation, I think for the most part, the society is against it, except there are certainly individuals in our society who favor it. I think we have taken not really a consensus because it's not medical. It's a recreational thing, and so essentially what we're doing is we're pointing to resources, is things like University of Colorado, I believe, had a report. It's about 100 pages long. You can get it on the internet. It basically goes through the experience of what's happened in Colorado from a public health standpoint in the first 3 years of legalization. I believe they've been 3 years now. Or maybe it's 2011 through 2014. And they report on some of the problems that they've had with increase in vehicle accidents, youth use of recreational cannabis, even though they're restricted from it, has gone up, I believe, by a factor of 2. And they're having some real problems in there. And I think that's one of the reasons why the governor is against it.
I think emergency rooms visits have gone up too.
Yes.
Yep.
And I don't believe it's produced as much tax revenue as they thought it would either. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It's an intoxicant. People who are on intoxicants sometimes do stupid things, and it's potentially another legal intoxicant. So I can tell you my experience as a medical doctor, since we've had medical marijuana in Massachusetts, it's kind of become okay for people to use recreational marijuana, not legally, but we all know that it's readily available. And from the standpoint of practicing gastroenterology, which is intestinal, digestive medicine, there has been a new epidemic, which I had never seen before a few years ago, and that's this syndrome of cyclical vomiting. And they have this syndrome of repeated abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. I have one particular kid who's 18 years old who comes in acute renal failure, and he needs to be rescued with IV fluids, and he's usually in the hospital for 3 or 4 days. I tell him, you can't keep doing this to yourself, and about a month later, he's back with the same thing.
Smoking marijuana?
There's actually a medical literature on it that describes the syndrome. It's called the cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. It causes real disease and disability, and like I said, there's this one fellow who I've seen repeatedly who comes in acute renal failure. He's lucky he doesn't end up on dialysis from it. So he probably will at some point. So it's you know, I get it. It's a plant, it's an herb, but it does have it's a toxin. It's a toxin. It's poisoning something. So.
I think you were kind of dragged into the medical marijuana thing a little bit, kicking and screaming also, right?
Yep, we were, but you know, that's, you know, we're part of society, and that's where society wanted to go, and so we tried to think of a way to make it rational, and then the government went and did what they wanted to do anyway.
Right.
So all we could do is make recommendations, but we do have 25,000 members, and you know, we have some resources that we can spend. If we can't convince you what's right, we can at least provide the evidence and the education to help maybe mitigate some of the problems that might come along with it.
Thank you.
Some of that will morph into our point C here a little bit, but next point is board elections. So some months ago when Susan and Eric and I were meeting as he was sort of coming on board, and we were talking about various things that happened at these various boards, we realized that there hadn't been an election at the Board of Health or apparently some of the other boards in quite some time. So it's been put to us that we really do need to elect our officers on an annual basis. And last night was made clear by the town manager that we should stop keeping one person as the chairman forever. It makes sense in terms of succession planning and sharing the responsibility, and as he kind of nicely put it, that when you know you may be the next one to be the chair, you maybe perhaps pay more attention. Is that sort of what he said?
Exactly,
So
yeah.
this item had been put on our agenda before that meeting last night, but the conversation that I had with Brian and a little bit ago with Frank was that I'm presuming nobody else is highly interested in being chairman at this point, I'd be willing to offer to be the chairman for a year or some period of time heretofore, but we do need to prepare that at the next term around, the town manager is really expecting that we will rotate the chairmanship. The board of selectmen actually, I think, do it every year. They turn it around, and there's I see the point that there's good role planning in that. So we have 2 officers. We have a chair and a clerk. So we've been instructed or asked, I guess, that we need to elect those 2 positions. So having said that, I would, I guess, open the floor for nominations.
I do get writer's cramp signing my name once a month.
Very good.
I would like to nominate Tom Trowbridge to continue as our worthy chairman, and Mr. Fixler to continue as our clerk for the time being.
I'll second both of those.
All right, so I guess we'll close nominations. And since that's a 1-person slate for each office, we'll consider that slate accepted. We don't need to have a vote. But again, we need to think some on that next year those positions do need to change.
Is there a particular month we should be planning an election so we can just pre-program the agenda?
There's nothing in the charter for years. We had sort of annually done it in the spring. I think May was a time that kind of rang true to me when I talked about it with Susan and Eric a while ago. I don't think that's written in the town charter or anywhere
don't think so.
particularly, but it was just kind of the pattern, so.
I can look into the town charter for that particular criteria, but.
If we just time it to the first meeting after the town meeting?
Yeah, you do it in May or June at the latest, and then you would have your next set of officers start probably July 1st and coincide with the fiscal year. So after town meeting, if you don't have a quorum in May, you still have June kind of on deck to do the elections to start July 1st would be kind of a safe way to do it.
So they recommend we rotate once a year then?
That's what they indicated at the meeting last night.
Yeah. Or at least prepare a rotational system.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, he didn't indicate annually, but that to keep one person in the position, as long as I can remember, is not the best community planning way to do it, but.
Although it's always been done that way.
Yes, exactly.
So
Is it going to
I
be
mean, I guess
uniform
probably
in the
the time
town?
is, though,
you had to usually
The Board
wait
of
for somebody to die.
the Board of Selectmen elect their chair after town elections. And it used to be, I think, a little bit earlier, and because this board used to be an elected position, maybe it went way back to that, but, or maybe all boards kind of follow the same timeline, but it was just
I was going to ask the
spring.
Godfather to intervene to get you off the, get you out as chairman, you know?
Sounds good to me. But,
Will there be any consistency in the town as far as election in all the different boards that we have? Does it depend upon the board, you know, like 1 year or 2 or 3 years of?
Like the planning board,
Yeah.
like
I think with
the
the
zoning
same
board.
members staying on the board, you have your consistency. I think just rotating the officers kind of gets everybody involved and gets everybody kind of up to speed on what the responsibilities of each office are.
But is it up
So,
to each board to determine the rotation of the officers on an annual
believe
basis,
so.
every 2 or 3 years?
Probably the
Really?
charter would be my guess, or with the appointments.
I think there's a requirement for an annual appointment, because again, I recall from years ago, we would do an election annually. There's nothing that says 1 year, 2 years, anything like that. When he spoke about it last night, he referenced a rotational system. He didn't say annually, but if we went back to him, he'd probably say he'd like to see it the way the Board of Selectmen do it, that every year it would shift around. While you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4 years. We'll just
Go right down the line.
5?
I'm trying to think, Board of Health in Methuen,
Mhm.
did they rotate?
No.
There's only 3, or there were only 3.
There was only 3, we did up to 5 when I was there.
Yeah.
Because of some quorum issues, but typically no. It's more of a board-specific or community-specific requirement. I guess it does depend on your charter and how the board is formed, and what the requirements are through the town. So I think it's more of a housekeeping issue. Even having elections once a year is just more of a literally cross your Ts and dot your Is every year. There are some communities that actually appoint their staff as agents of the board every year, and some communities that only do it once, and it stays in perpetuity until that staff leaves and somebody else comes in. So, which leads to my next point, is you guys probably think about appointing me as an agent of your board so I can do your policy enforcement, statutory enforcement, and things like that. So while we're doing elections, if you want to just go ahead and do that, that'd be great. Make me official.
So why don't we do that?
Move that we appoint Brian as our agent for the upcoming year.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now I join Michelle and Deb and Lisa as your official staff.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, so moving forward, the elections is more of a housekeeping, good paperwork thing. If you do it every year, you don't have to, but if the town wants it, then I think it's one thing to do. This time of year, every year, you guys want to have, if you guys want to set your own appointment dates in terms of the elections are every 2 years, you can do that too. I think we just have to look into the charter and talk to the town manager and maybe the new town council as to what the legal requirements are.
We can research that further, but my term is 1 year. So,
You can be reelected though, can't you?
not if I don't accept the nomination. So the next point here is sort of a little bit more free form. Having brought Brian on board, it seems like, you know, he and I have had some conversations, and actually before he came on board, we all had meetings with Eric, the Director of Economic and Community Development. We sort of had some conversations about the sort of the things that the board did and what our interests and goals were. So some of the things that Brian and I talked about, and I think I heard this from some of you also, that for the past year or so, we found ourselves spending a lot of time and energy on the regulatory enforcement part of things that we oversee. And on her way out, that was a thing that when Susan reflected back, she felt, I think, that concerned her a little bit, that she couldn't put more of her energy and time into human services part of it. So, and when I spoke last night and talked to the Board of Selectmen, I said that I had started those conversations with Eric and with Brian. He and I met last week and talked about that. So this isn't a specific planning conversation, but Brian, I thought we could maybe kind of open up and do a little brainstorming on these kind of matters, and what kind of burning health issues have we all had in the back of our heads that we thought we sort of not put a lot of energy into, or things that maybe have been neglected. And I think that one thing obviously that jumps right away there is this whole opiate issue. And we're very lucky to have Brian, because he's served on the legislatively formed regional task force to look at opiates and that problem that was formed by Representative Diane DeZoglio. So we do have a local task force, and Ed is our representative to that. I'm not sure if you want to sort of talk a bit about that, but again, that's kind of, Brian has said he'll continue to serve on the regional task force, and at some point we want to talk about how we can play some role in that, I guess.
Do you want to go first?
So I have attended one of the two meetings, and Joe went in my place at
And
the
Larry.
second meeting. And Larry. And the first was primarily information gathering, list of sort of topics and fact-finding thrown out to the group to consider, and the chair of the committee then went off and sort of assigned tasks to people and reported back. So I don't have any great insight from the first meeting, other than it was, you know, general fact-finding, discussion of the issues, you know, an introduction of the members, sort of a cross-section of the community on the committee, and no tangible progress to report from the first meeting, other than folks got to know each other, and, you know, there was sort of a fact-finding agenda set up and questions to be asked. If you guys wanted to add anything that happened from meeting two.
Yeah, my sentiments are pretty much the same as yours. However, I did notice that there was not a representative from the pharmaceutical or medical establishment at the meeting, and they have a tremendous amount to add to the viability of the meetings. I know that when they realized that Larry had been a pharmacist, at one point he pretty much took over the meeting, and they were very much interested in what he had to say. So we have an opiate meeting, but we don't have a doctor. We don't have a pharmacist. They can only add value to that meeting, and I hope that that is something that they consider going forward.
Well, a lot of what they were talking about at the meeting, I went with Joe. He told me about it. I said, well, I'll go with you. I might be able to offer some information that nobody else may be able to offer. So we walked in the middle of something. I guess they were, when Joe and I went, they were looking for reports that the individuals were tasked to do. They were reporting on certain questions. They were I don't know if you were given a question that you had to do some research on, but some of them were reporting back. And so we kind of walked in the middle without any explanation as to really what they were doing. The meeting took place at the police community room at the police department. It seems like they're trying to determine what the problem is in North Andover, if there's a problem in North Andover, what to do about it, how to go about investigating if we have a problem with adults and children using illegal opiates, any illicit drug, really. And so the police gave their report. I think they only had I think the detective said 16 arrests. That sounded,
It's a very good
low.
report,
Extremely
very good
low.
report.
It was very good, yeah.
Because we learned a lot.
Yeah.
The police department, actually, I thought everyone did a good job. I'm just saying that there were some voids that they may want to consider filling going forward.
They had representatives from the school department there. They had the assistant superintendent there. I forgot the gentleman's name. They had the police. They had some social counselor.
Greg Gilligan.
There is it.
Greg Gilligan.
Greg, yeah, Greg is it. Social worker there. They had the representative of the youth center there. And they had also people that work very closely with people who have addiction-type problems, psychological. And but they didn't have any doctor or pharmacist, so I was really glad to have gone and talk, which was good. But I don't know the outcome because it wasn't followed up with to us, so I don't know where it's going or what happened to the report. I don't even know what the ending is, or if it's continuing. So I
don't know if they've made any more progress. I haven't been invited to a meeting with this task force since I started here.
Yeah.
So hopefully when they have another one, and I've spoken to Phil DeCollegiero a couple times over the past month regarding this topic, and he's also going to be very involved. Something is going to go forward with that. I just don't know what or when. The other group that I am involved with, and this topic, as you guys know, there are so many different branches and arms of this particular issue that, I mean, it goes everywhere from access to education and awareness to use to recovery to support and family issues and support meetings with the people that are affected by it. There's the courts, there's the enforcement and the police aspect of it, there's the medical calls and the EMT and the emergency response for all of the issues with this. It's in the schools. There are so many different topics and areas to focus on. It's hard to just pick one. The group that I am involved with, that Diana Desagri has started up, it's a Merrimack Valley-based nonprofit group, and they focus on awareness and support. So people that have been affected by it, they want to help give them support and introduce them to other resources available in terms of treatment centers, family support, counseling, and the list goes on, as well as education and awareness to families, parents, knowing the signs, to talking to students and the youth about the dangers. So they focus on that area right there. I am the chairman of the grant subcommittee, looking and trying to get funding to help do these programs. So we've gotten a little bit of funding so far. We do have the nonprofit status, which is a great tool to have in getting donations and fundraisers and getting state grants and federal grants to actually get this message out there and to help them do their work. So they actually had a booth at the sheep shearing this past Sunday, set up with brochures, banners. They had the whole pop-up tent, and they had volunteers there talking to people as they came by and giving out information, which actually was a very big success. They were at Clowntown in Andover on Saturday, the day before, and they do as many events as they can to try to get their message out there and to give people the information they need that they don't know that they can even get. They also do an annual event every year. It's usually in the fall, where they have vendors and speakers from the area come and do presentations to anybody that wants to show up. And there was about 150, 200 people at the last event last fall. So they're looking to do that again this fall. They did have a general membership meeting here in North Andover 2 months ago at the Senior Center. They're looking to expand and do more. So that's one thing that we are working on. So that's something that I'm going to still do. And I think as your representative for this board in North Andover, getting those resources to us, to this problem, and to help do what I can with this nonprofit group, I think, is one aspect that we will be working on in this the next coming year.
So So I think about this in a lot of different ways, similarly to how you do. You know, there's different stages that you want to get in on. There's the education piece, and unfortunately, programs like the DARE program, there's no evidence that they work at all. In fact, they may actually make things worse. So the education part is still out there. One of the prevention items that was actually discussed at the Mass Medical House was mindfulness training, and I think this were 3 or 4 resolutions that were discussed on this about what to do about trying to get mindfulness training into schools. And before somebody gets upset and says that sounds like it's kind of wishy-gushy, kind of hocus-pocus stuff, it's actually it's based on a lot of the principles of mind-body medicine, meditation, things like that. What you're trying to do is teach people how to cope without a chemical. Okay. And so maybe that's something that we want to look at as a town, or maybe the school department wants to look in. The society didn't take a hard position. Somebody felt very strongly and they wanted to create some kind of legislative mandate, and that didn't go over very well. So I don't think that we want to create a mandate, but I think what we want to do is bring it to school systems that this kind of training is out there. It could be incorporated into part of the health education. And have some of the health education. You know, you talk about the different things as kids are growing and developing, but one of the things is how do you cope with life's anxieties, and do you turn to a chemical, because a chemical always works. And so when we tell people don't use chemicals, you immediately lose credit with them because their experience tells them otherwise. And so what you have to do is you have to say, yes, chemicals work, but there's a cost, there's a danger to it. Mm-hmm. And so you have to find some other way to get what you need in life. Yeah. And so, maybe something like mindfulness training, it doesn't have to be that, but it could be something simple that could be incorporated into a health curriculum. And maybe we could at least, not that we're going to implement something like that as the Board of Health, but bring that to the attention of this task force and of our school department, that maybe this is something that we ought to look into. There are a number of cities and towns in Massachusetts that are looking into this already. And so that would be something that I'd be in favor of us, bringing to the people who can do something with it. I definitely agree with support recovery. We want to get away from the criminal side, but there actually is some role for the criminal side too, because you do have people who either can't or won't take advantage, and sometimes you need the force of the criminal justice system to basically rescue them. And I'm sorry that sounds paternalistic, but I think sometimes it's called for. Yeah. Some people are so out of control that they just can't help themselves. Right. And so you can't take that off the table. You have to make it not the first option. Yeah. But it's multidisciplinary.
Right. And the police have taken a completely different approach where, pardon my French, but the term 10 years ago was junkie. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something that they've gotten away from, and they've retrained themselves with the whole Angel program that started in Gloucester and then spread across the entire country, where they're there to give them help and assist them in getting into recovery versus, arresting them and locking them up and putting them in jail. Same thing with the drug courts. So that aspect of this entire operation has taken on a different mentality that started years ago, but has actually gotten out there and is way more mainstream now, which is good. So that's actually helping a lot with the enforcement side when it's needed, but also the assistance side on the police department's aspect of it.
Right, and let's be honest. Even people who don't have an addictive personality can become physically dependent on these drugs. You're using them for a purpose. After about 30 days or so, your body starts becoming resistant to them. And that's just a fact, and you need to take more. And that's the first step in the development of the addiction, is you just need more and more just to kind of start feeling normal. And then you get that withdrawal, and now you're not even going for the high anymore. You're just trying to just get through your day. Yeah. And it's we need to find a way to stop that from happening in the first place. So I couldn't agree more.
At the meeting also, we talked about the behavior patterns of the students. We got into that. I asked if the teachers are trained to observe and to understand when a student isn't acting rational and there may be a problem. And I don't think the teachers have any formal training as far as that goes.
And that's part of the recognition, either from a parent or from a peer or from an educator.
So we got into that, and we also talked about the one thing I brought up is, people, Frank said earlier, they go home with whatever pain meds they need for 5 or 7 days. Rather than put it in your medicine chest, lock it up in a lockbox somewhere, because then it's not available
Right.
to people that visit you in your home or your family. Because it shouldn't be available to anybody but the patient.
Yep.
And we went into that a lot, and I gave it, if you have time for one quick story, I think we had 16 arrests. I think that's what the detective said. EJ?
AJ, you don't know it.
Forgive me,
I think it is EJ.
EJ, yeah, I forget.
EJ Folds.
EJ Folds, yeah, I forget everybody's
Yeah.
name. But when I was a practicing pharmacist in one of the towns, I averaged having probably about 70 to 80 arrests a year. I called police, bad scripts, all kinds of stuff that goes on. We were number one hotspot in town. We were number one over any projects or anything else, the pharmacy. So what we talked about was, you know what's going on, and you know what's going on at various age levels and adults. In the pharmacy, I mean, I saw it the whole time. I mean, and the doctors, maybe the general practitioners can see it when they come in, or you can see how a patient acts and so forth, but it's happening. Whatever you think it is, probably times 10 or 20 minimum. It's there. It's being hidden, but it's underneath the water, and it's very difficult to see underneath the water. Real quick story that I told at the meeting, just to tell you how, well, you already know how bad it is, but I had a patient. She had whatever form of cancer, and she was dying, and she was in severe pain. And she was on straight oxycodone, and she needed it big time. So she was a very old lady, and she used to come in, and we would talk, and she says, "No, my pain is not getting any better." And we talked about it, and I said, "This doesn't make any sense." So I called the doctor, and we were just going back and forth as to what to do to help her, because I would give advice as to what to prescribe. And, you know, we would talk as a collaborative as to what to do to help the patients in pain. So nothing seemed to be working that well. So I decided I wanted to see what was like in her medicine chest. I knew her quite well. So I said, "I'll tell you what, I want to make sure everything's okay at home." I said, "How about I stop up?" Because I would deliver medicine now and then to the little old ladies that need it. Why not? They can't get out. So I said, and she lived almost across the street. I said, "How about I come over, take a look, and you show me your bottle. Show me the medicines you take that I give you." And she did. And I opened up her oxycodone bottle, and there wasn't the pills that I put in there. I said, "Let me take the bottle back." I said, "I don't want you taking any more of these until I identify what's in there." And apparently, one of the she had a visitor who knew her quite well, a relative, and the visitor took her birth control pill, which were little white pills, put it into her pain meds, and took the pain meds out. And this little old lady who was dying of cancer was taking 1 or 2 estradiol tablets or whatever she was taking whenever she needed it for pain. So that's how bad the lengths people will go to,
Right.
To dupe relatives, to dupe the pharmacist, to dupe the doctor. I mean, this is just what we see.
Right.
But what goes on underneath is remarkable.
Yeah.
Just remarkable.
Okay.
I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's why I'm involved with this, and that's why I think as a board, town, we should stay involved with this topic and do what we can. And if I can get money for this nonprofit to help them reach a few people out there, then that's what we're going to do. So.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to make some plans, talking about other priorities of things other than opiates. I think we're going to have to make a presumption that this recreational marijuana law is probably going to pass. We have to figure out how to respond to it.
I hope not.
I think it's going to pass.
Plan ahead.
The only other thing that I think would be helpful is every 2 years I recertify in CPR, and I'm amazed at how easy it is and how you can teach it to a 6th grader. Maybe we should be teaching this to our middle schoolers. Some of them have an old fart daddy like me who might need it. And I would be, it's a skill that's not difficult to teach. And even if it's done imperfectly, just the steps that are involved,
call 911, get a defibrillator, things like that. Now that the defibrillators are more widespread, they're in supermarkets, things like that. Wouldn't it be nice if we kind of trained people from 6th grade on to basically have that skill? They never know when they're going to need it. But I saw something, it might have even been on social media, about a 13 or 14-year-old girl doing that on her father. The note realized she learned it in school. The mother was doing it ineffectively. She says, "I'm taking over. You call 911. Save the father's life," with no mental deficits, things like that. It was one of those. It was like a news story that made it onto social media.
Yeah.
But it was just very compelling to me that maybe this is something that I don't want to pile on the mandates. I'm not saying mandates. I'm just saying that
but
if this is part of the health education that people can get in
Yes.
North Andover. That would be a worthwhile endeavor.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's, if the board wants to sponsor that, I can look into the cost for these classes, talk to the school department, see what they're able to do with their student body, and try to take that next
even
step.
within their existing curriculum, how can you maybe coordinate, work that in? Maybe that could be part of a North Andover health education priority. Is that
Don't the kids take a health class?
They do, and there's lots of things that they address, and it's been a long time since I've been in 6th grade. But I did go to North Andover Middle School, and I also stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
You're lucky. You went beyond the 6th grade. You're very fortunate.
But it just things like that. I mean, those are they're kind of easy to do, and they're hard not to support, and they produce a real population benefit.
I can definitely look into that if that's.
Well, I think we're just brainstorming right now.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
throw that out
Let me
for
tell you,
consideration.
So last week, Brian and I met and sort of did a little brainstorming of our own. He made a couple offers. Let me tell you the things that we kind of started with, and then, again, I don't want to set up a list tonight to send back to him, but again, this started a brainstorm, but probably would be best to continue this next month. But the things, kind of the big picture things we talked about were consider, and we used to do a little bit of this, and you guys did it on colon cancer recently, but consider doing a little bit more regular public education sessions. We have opportunities with the youth, with the senior and the veterans groups in town, and we used to have a more regular involvement with doing newspaper articles. We did something pretty regular with the Citizen quite some time ago, and Brian used to do that. You did that in Methuen a little bit, and we could consider that. And again, this is just sort of ideas written down. He also serves on the regional task force for now what is emergency planning, health, and community response. So again, we kind of see what kind of things can come out of that. We talked a little bit about the opiate issue, and we've had it as a priority for ourselves for some time, to trying to work on increasing vaccine coverage for the public when we've had funds available, both in terms of getting the medicine available and getting the education out to the public of the need for it and what populations and what demographics benefit from that. And then also Brian discovered that Merrimack College now has a public health major. And so he talked about engaging with them and maybe getting a couple of interns into the department and do kind of some project-based work things, and kind of whether we put out some research or have them do some kind of surveys and kind of find out what kind of things could be or need to be addressed. He said he would start working and engaging on that. So that's a starting point of things that we came up with in a half-an-hour visit, but I thought we could kind of look at, that's kind of more public health services, and kind of float those out as starters, and maybe next month we can come back a little bit more, and whether we decide to do some prioritization that time. There's no timeline on this. This is not a mandate we got from anywhere, but just kind of something that we kind of realized on reflecting over the last few years. So,
Well, whatever we do to put out there, information-wise or presentation-wise, is only going to benefit everybody.
Exactly.
I mean, we do a lot of regulatory issues. I mean, we had a major rewrites last year about some real heavy-duty regs, and it's good to teach people.
Right.
It's good to discuss.
And that's what Tom and I discussed, was the focus has always been on the regulatory aspect of the health department, because there are so many regulations that we enforce, that takes away from, call it the health and human services side of the health department, which is public outreach programs, sponsoring, getting education, articles, just being out there and doing that type of work versus the regulations.
Yeah.
And every health department across the state has the same problem, because there's such a burden on enforcement, and that is a lot more tangible, unfortunately, than running a public health program. Regulations have statutory requirements, and if you don't do those inspections, then you're not doing your job. Versus, well, what about that part of your job? There's no deadline for that. There's no statutory requirement that you put on this program.
Well, just
So
as-
we've always gotten bogged down in half
yeah.
of our description, where now we're gonna try to branch out and get all of it done and try to implement some of this. And I've already met with Merrimack College. I've spoken to the Dean of Health Sciences and met with the coordinator of experimental learning, which is co-op and interns. And he's got an intern already lined up for us for this coming fall. I'm trying to nail it down and get it definite, but he's already offered it to a student that wants to do a public health intern in the area and do public education.
Great.
So I'm trying my best.
No, it's great, because just when Tom mentioned CPR training, Ed's wife Kathleen, she did a wonderful job. We took CPR training, Kathleen taught it, at the retirement community at Edgewood, right? Yeah, it was a delight. They volunteered their area. They had refreshments, and they had a large turnout for the CPR class. And whoever's watching, the CPR training isn't a month long. We did it in couple hours, hour and a half, and but it gave everybody the basics as to what to do.
Yep.
Most people don't know what to do if they witness somebody going down. So she did an excellent job.
So we
Yeah, it's
can
become
tap-
really very easy. The most current guidelines for CPR, I think for some people, the hang-up of doing CPR was having to do the so-called mouth-to-mouth. That's now been actually eliminated from the layperson's provision of CPR, that they saw that in terms of doing the CPR, that was the least effectively done and perhaps the lesser important of the two skills. So if you're a healthcare provider is one sort of piece of it, but if you're a layperson provider of CPR, there's a format taught where there's only chest compressions and call for help and
Right.
all those kind of things. But mouth-to-mouth is not a part of it.
No, it's not pump 5 and breathe 1.
Right.
No, not at all. You want to keep the blood flowing. There's oxygen in the blood.
Not those old TV, the ER shows from way back when. If we can tap into that resource again, then I think that would be something we should definitely try to do, and offer to different groups too.
Also,
The senior center.
sponsoring, one thing also last year, and I know Tom has this in his notes, sponsoring ServSafe certification at a discount or free, or whatever it might be.
Yes.
To help, the better we can improve our sanitation
Yep.
in restaurants,
Mhm.
and everyone wearing their gloves and wearing their hats and everything
Yep.
else, the better people will feel when they go into our town to eat. This is very simple.
Exactly. I have actually already discussed that with PPS about doing additional classes
Yeah.
throughout the town. They're definitely willing to do it, so at least we've taken that first step, and they're going to look at their resources and what they can offer and provide. But that is something that I've already talked to them about after our initial discussion, and that's going to definitely happen.
Yeah, even at a a nice discount
Of
or
course,
something.
yeah,
you know.
absolutely. I think that would entice the restaurants to send their employees,
Exactly.
because
More than one or more than two.
Correct.
Even a variation of what New York City does with the, is it the A, B, C? But basically, just say, you've kind of, rather than have a letter grade, but just say, you could put our certificate, North Andover Board of Public Health,
has trained
has trained establishment, yeah, and they just put that in their window. I mean,
I think that's a good idea, actually.
so we don't have to grade them like New York City, we don't have the resources to do that, but
Right, and
I'll
that's
tell
what
you,
the-
when I was in Manhattan a couple of years ago, I was like, that's a B, let's keep walking. I think I want the A.
Well, that's
Yeah.
pretty striking. And actually, we sort of had this conversation circled around that in various formats of
Yes, it is.
how would it incentivize to, and there are towns in Massachusetts that actually make publicly available restaurant
Inspection.
inspections.
Mhm. I think we're I don't know if we're at that stage yet, and I'm still getting acclimated to the food protection program here. I do know that the grading system can be very political and cause a lot of headaches. And it is a little bit biased and unfair because the general public doesn't know that this restaurant got a B because they had a broken, whatever, versus this restaurant got a B because they're unsanitary, or a C. So there's definitely different weighting on the different called violations, if you will, or issues that you find in a restaurant kitchen. So giving a grade doesn't tell the full picture between A, B, C, D, and F versus what the actual violations were. So I think it would be more beneficial in the future when we get to that point to have these inspection reports maybe available to the public, maybe. And I haven't talked with anybody else about that yet. Obviously, that's something that just came up, but.
Some towns have them hanging up in the door as you come in, restaurant inspections. I've seen them. So
That's
if you want to
one way
see
to do it. If you want to see it, it's there for the viewing.
what's going on, just,
The restaurant inspections are public record, and they are in our office. If anybody comes down, they are more than welcome to request them for whatever restaurant they want to go to. We have them. It is public record, and we will give them copies. But they're just not online yet.
But again, in terms of incentivizing, I think that's an interesting thing to say. If we do a training of Serve Safe, and whether we gave people a certificate or, again, sort of go to the Tribune and promote this and say, kind of popularize it in advance, and then be able to say at some point in a little story in the paper, well, 5 restaurants had staff trained in a North Andover sponsored Serve Safe program, something like that. I mean, not that that's final, but I think that's.
Yeah, so it's a little bump up rather than a knockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think we really want to be in the business to knock down. We want to correct problems where they are.
Yep.
But I think another way to incentivize the good behavior is basically give a little bump up.
Promote the good activity.
Gold star.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It's, you don't have to have a gold star to operate, but they want the extra measure and got the gold star. Well, maybe there's something good about them.
My son gets
So-
yellow smiley faces from school when he's a good boy, so.
Yeah.
And it's actually incentivizes him to be good because he hangs them on his wall.
I believe it's mandatory to have one per shift? Somebody,
Yep.
okay, so restaurants might have,
Or a manager and then dedicated persons in charge,
Is
called
that-
PICs, that are trained.
Okay.
They might not necessarily have to have ServSafe, but they're knowledgeable and have been trained by the manager, who is ServSafe certified.
you get a certificate. It's a nice certificate. You get
Yeah.
one.
Restaurants are required to hang them up on
They're
the wall too,
posted,
so
yeah.
they are up there and they are posted as
Yeah.
well. But it would be nice to have a certificate from us saying they have taken a North Andover sponsored ServSafe course, put it on letterhead, and they can hang that up as well in their window. But definitely something we can look into, and like I said, this is brainstorming. I think you should think about it over the course of the next month. Any other ideas you guys have, we're here to make that happen for you. Me, Michelle, Lisa, and Debbie.
I really think for a while, all of our, a great big part of our activity has been governed by things that have come up through regulation. We've seen whatever it is, and then we sort of start focusing on that. So given that we have a new director and some commitment from the higher, sort of the upper level, from the leadership of the town, if we come up with activities like these things that we like to promote in terms of human services, let's think them up and put some work into them.
One of the things that you mentioned, Tom, is perhaps newspaper articles. Frank, being humble, and I'm not facetious when I say that, he has a column every month. I can't. What is the name of that paper?
That's the Valley Patriot.
Oh,
Valley Patriot. Okay. So I was just looking at my little my iPhone trying to get the name of it, and it's very good.
Thank you.
It's very, very good. It's always about health issues of concern to so many of us. As a matter of fact, in April, his column was on the presentation that he and I had given at the Senior Center on cancer from the perspective of a cancer survivor and his doctor. And I advise you, and anyone that is listening, to read his articles. Yeah.
Thank you.
They're great.
I do them for free. It's free advertising.
I think writing articles is a great way to get some message out there. Years ago, we actually started them in the region, and health directors in the area would all take a turn and write an article, and Dr. Trowbridge would try to get them published in the Tribune. And we did a good dozen articles years ago, but people actually read them. And it would be on some topic that was relevant to that season or time, whether it was Lyme disease or something in the summer, sun safety and skin cancer awareness, you know, from wear sunscreen to get your moles checked to something in the fall about, you know, when you're out leaf peeping, be careful, look for A, B, and C, or, you know, just things like that that could be fun, could be seasonal, could be something relevant of whatever is going on. If there's a hot button item, Zika virus, let's write a little article and see if we can get it in the paper, the Valley Patriot, the Citizen, the Tribune, even just, you know, the town website would be great too. So anything you guys want to do or any ideas you guys have, I can either work on it for you or with you, and we can try to get something presented out there, just for some fun topics.
We did that a while ago. You have to be careful about that because, as Frank will tell you, to even write a short article and have it be well-based is not a quick thing to knock off. It takes some time, so.
It does. But that's what we're here for.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes a dedicated editor. My wife makes sure that my run-on sentences, they're actually all grammatically correct, but they don't
Yes.
read well. So she makes sure it's like, yeah, that's 3 sentences there. Why don't you break that up? So she always, before they go out, before I hit send, she always has her.
Perfect.
She always has her struck in white present.
The red pen.
Exactly.
And last night, one of the questions that was posed to me was actually a question about Zika virus, which is what we talked about a month or so ago with the mosquito control district. So these are kind of things, you know, are of interest to people, whether it's town leaders or various citizens. So these are some good ideas. Maybe we'll have another conversation like this next month and then start doing a little prioritizing of this or thinking about what we can maybe do to accomplish some of these. We can't do them all in 1 month or whatever, but we can kind of start working on it a little bit.
I did start writing an article or gathering some information on the Zika virus. I know that there was a question last night at the selectmen's meeting. I've had a few questions at our office, either people coming in or people calling about it. So I want to get some more information out there. There's a lot of information. The information that's been being presented has been a slow trickle of new information over the course of, 6 months. So getting, as it comes in, people hear one thing but then don't hear the next thing. And it's kind of compiling all the information that I've gathered and trying to get something a little more comprehensive out there, because some of the questions that I've received is, what are we doing about Zika virus here? Like, well, we don't actually have Zika virus here. It's not native to this area. The mosquitoes in this area don't carry it. It's the people that travel to the areas where it's endemic at this point are getting affected and just coming back. Or they live there, have been infected, and then they travel here, and they get diagnosed. So just getting some of these misconceptions out there, getting some information out there, I think is something that I'm going to try to work on the next few days, and I can send you guys a little write-up and see what we want to do with it.
Fine.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Continue on, I guess. Anything else? Any other topics you guys want to?
No, I think this is a pretty good start, given that we had no forethought really, so we can, again, continue this next month and go from there.
It sounds good.
Okay. I guess the last bit of information I don't know if you got the email, I sent it late this afternoon. It was a draft letter for 45 Elm Street and the next step in that process. We talked about it at the last meeting, and you guys had given a verbal deadline of 45 to 60 days for the housing code violations found at that location. I did draft a quick little letter, send it to you guys. You guys want to take a look at it?
Yep.
I'm going to get that out probably tomorrow, or if you want me to hold off the next day.
I thought it looked fine. It was
Okay.
very, very matter of fact, and it was,
And I
I don't
have,
think that there's a lot of,
I tried to not have a lot of ambiguity.
I agree with Frank, yeah, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I said the same to Brian earlier, before the meeting. It's sad that we even have to issue
Right.
a letter like
And
this,
I-
but it is self-explanatory.
I've been going back and forth with the owner for the better portion of this last month.
And unfortunately, you're not the only person that has done that.
Correct. I gave her an olive branch, wanted to try to take that next step and say, hey, look, I'm here to help you. Here's some violations, let's take a look, let's see what we can do to come up with a solution. And she was almost there. We were supposed to meet this week, and she backed out the end of last week and said, sorry, I can't do it, I'm too busy.
I talked to Brian about the 30 days from receipt of the order. Thinking about it and then thinking about what you're saying now, since you were actively involved with them, trying to help them to follow the previous order letter, it's not like they were unaware of it, because they were before us 2 months ago.
Correct.
Or a month ago.
Yep.
We voted on it a month ago, and they were there the month prior.
Yes.
So there's no surprise to this letter.
And I even emailed her and said, hey, look, she
Right.
said, why are you, because when she said, sorry, I can't meet you for several more weeks, I said, well, I kind of need to, keep working on this. She said, what's the rush? I said, you have an outstanding order letter. You appealed it to the board. You had a board hearing. They voted to continue on and basically denied your appeal. So I have an outstanding order letter that I have to work with legally. So I was very nice to her. I explained it as a matter of fact, I'm here to help you. Why are you doing this? I'm like, well, I'm new. I'm trying to close out all of these old issues that are still on the books and cooking as, I took office here. The housing code gives you a 30-day deadline. That's state law. Here's your 30-day deadline.
I mean, we can extend it, but I
We can
agree with
extend
the
it.
30 days.
You
Now,
can extend
because
it if needed,
Yeah.
or if they're making progress. And the courts always look for, are they making progress? Or are they standing still and blowing off? Then the courts will step in and actually give them court stipulations, which is above and beyond what we can do here.
Yeah, no, I agree with the 30 days. I thought about it because I want to make sure we're fair to
Yes.
the people.
Yep.
I don't want to mention names, but I want to make sure we're fair, and I think we are, because you've been working with them, trying to get them, to bring them into compliance and talking to them and so forth. So it's not like it's been an issue that has not been discussed
Right.
over the past month.
Right.
So since it has been, I agree with your 30 days is fine.
Thank you. And one other thing, I wanted to get in there and see it for myself. I haven't been into this property. I've been there, and I've left a card at the door, and I did reach out and started emailing with her, but I've never actually been inside the property. So I'd like to see it for myself and see what was seen before and what was documented, and just get a more of a verbal, visual on what some of the violations are and how bad it is, versus reading it and trying to, picture it.
Yeah.
I think the letter's very clear and very straightforward, and doesn't leave any room for if and whatever.
Right, and that
But think
was-
of alternatives. So the order letter was issued on the basis of an inspection that was done by a request by her
It was a
To
tenant
put-
that was living there, yes, yeah.
to sort of serve as what do we call it, a rooming house.
Yes, yeah.
If she were to withdraw that request completely,
Can't,
she can't.
No.
Okay.
no.
And that's
Once-
because we've been in there.
That's because we've been in there and we've documented and
Okay.
drafted violations, which obviously then she appealed and then came before the board, and you sustained the original order letter. You can't rent it out. You have housing code violations you need to fix. That's the whole appeal process, unless they want to take us to court.
Tom, I asked Brian about this because, the same question too, because what if they just withdraw it and it's their own private home? I mean, I wouldn't want Brian sticking his nose in my home, get away, get away, get away. And, but now that we've been in there, these violations Brian had mentioned, and please correct me if I'm wrong, are the basic violations of
Human-
human habitation, right?
Yep, minimum standards.
Minimum
State
standards,
code.
so this
All right,
is,
so it carries, once you're, okay, so we got in there on the basis of request to do a certain thing, but once we've
By
established
yes.
findings
Yep.
then it's the minimum habitation code. Okay.
That's when we found the house with the hole in the ceiling and the rain
Yeah,
coming
the thing
through.
down by where Dunkin' Donuts. is.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're in
Alright.
that situation.
The housing code doesn't differentiate between a tenant, an owner, a single-family home, a condo, an apartment. The housing code is basically for minimum standards of human habitation
Right.
by state law. Typically, a homeowner doesn't call in himself and have us come down there and tell them what they need to fix. It's usually 99% of the time it's a tenant living there paying rent that would call us. We go in, we inspect, we document the violations. Then, as the Board of Health and the agent of the board, I follow the statutory requirements of following it through the process of fixing those minimum standards for human habitation.
We've had it happen where the ambulance from the fire department goes to.
Right, they'll-
They say, you know what, there's a problem here, and so we'll be
Right.
called out in that
A
situation.
lot of times reporters, that's what happens. We go out there from
Some
an
kind of
EMS
emergency
call.
service, yeah.
Right, and then you're like, okay, this is not just affecting the individual house, infestation, and then safety issues.
Affects the neighbors.
Correct.
and
You have
condos.
rodents, roaches, insect infestation, and then you're also endangering emergency personnel and EMS, police on any type of call. So one of the biggest things is for a hoarder or somebody that has, they call it excessive clutter. If there's ever a fire, emergency responders going in might not be able to get back out because the houses are so full of stuff. So, like you said, we get called out from that aspect, and the majority of the time it is the actual tenants that aren't getting things fixed by their landlord.
I think the letter is very clear on it.
The can's been opened.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's all that I have for you guys tonight.
Well, I want to say, this is my first time meeting you at a meeting, and I'm very happy that you're on board, and welcome to the board. I'm sure you got a welcome last month, but I'll give you
Yes.
mine.
Thank you very much, I
So-
appreciate that. And tell your father I said hi.
I will,
I worked
absolutely.
with him a long time ago.
Yes, I knew that, yes, a long time ago.
All right.
And
All right.
we're both older now.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with one last thought. One of my pharmacy journals. The number one product dollar-wise sold in the front of the store, so over the counter, in pharmacies over a 1-year period. The number one product. Somebody guess something.
Cigarettes.
Nah. Tobacco. Tobacco is the number one dollar volume product in pharmacies.
I do like the fact that some pharmacies are going tobacco-free. I know CVS has done it already, which it's always been kind of an oxymoron where you sell cigarettes at the front and all of the prescriptions that make you better in the back. Let's reverse those.
You mean sell pharmacy up front and cigarettes in the back?
Yeah. But yeah, they put the cigarettes right up front as soon as you walk in.
Yeah.
And anybody has to get a prescription for something has to go to the back of the store. So, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Well, as they say, a motion to adjourn is always in order.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.